All right, we now welcome in the newly minted head coach of the Virginia Cavaliers. He is Ryan Odom. Ryan, welcome. Does it feel like life is coming full circle right now?
Yeah, no question. Great to be on with you. Excited, obviously, to be at the University of Virginia. It really is a full circle moment in a lot of ways, and been on the job for a bit now, and happy to be here in Charlottesville.
Now, your father, the famous Dave Odom, who was obviously a great coach in his own right at Wake Forest in South Carolina, was an assistant at the University of Virginia before he became a head coach. I'm curious, what are your childhood memories of UVA in Charlottesville?
Yeah, nothing but great memories, honestly. Third grade to ninth grade, walking across the bridge from our house over to University Hall to watch Coach Holland, who was the head coach at the time. My dad and other coaches as well, Jeff Jones, Jim Larinaga, some great coaches there and great players. I was very fortunate to have a front seat to high level people operating together and winning together. And certainly I saw the support firsthand of what it's like to be a part of the Virginia basketball program and University of Virginia community as a whole. And, it really was a true blessing for me.
Now, beyond that, beyond your father being an assistant at Virginia during his coaching career, beyond the fact that you're the Virginia head coach now, you are forever tied to this program because when you were the head coach at UMBC, you led UMBC to that famous upset in the NCAA tournament. It was the first time that a 16 beat a 1 seed. How often do people stop you on the street and bring up that game?
It definitely right after the game happened, it was a lot. It's gone down quite a bit since then because it's many years have passed. But certainly, it's a moment that team and that group will always be proud of. We're still connected, with one another, and I think in a lot of ways for both teams, for Virginia and for UMBC, it was a defining time in both programs because Virginia. The way that Coach Bennett handled that situation and his team got back to work and really used that moment to drive them and propel them forward to what we all know was, an amazing ending that next season. It was really something that'll be studied, for a long, long time.
Now, after that great run at UMBC, you became the head coach at Utah State. And I found it really, really fascinating that you opted as somebody who was an East Coast ACC guy to go out to the West Coast and coach the Mountain West. What does a coach learn about himself when he forces himself to coach outside of his geographic footprint?
Yeah, I mean, I think it certainly challenges you. There's no question about it. Initially when we first went out there, everything's new. And I certainly had vacationed out there, had traveled out there and seen what Utah was all about. But what I did find out there was a state that is crazy for basketball, a school, most importantly, that's crazy for basketball and the tradition. I wanted to be at a place that, really cared about basketball and wanted to see its program compete for championships and NCAA tournaments. And they certainly had done that, over the course of their storied, history. And, I think for me, it helped our staff grow closer together. We were all away from our comfort zone. We were able to meet new people and enter a new, mix in terms of a really tough conference, a really competitive conference against great coaches and other great players. But then also it allowed us to gain more contacts, nationally, by going out west.
So you go to Utah State, you have a great run at Utah State, led the Aggies to the NCAA tournament, and then you made the choice to go back to the East Coast to take the VCU job, but you were leaving a conference in the Mountain West that somehow or another always finds a way to get a handful of teams into the NCAA tournament, to a league in the Atlantic 10 that has struggled to be much more than a one-bid league the last couple of years. What was it like going from a multi-bid league to a conference where you kind of had to be flawless to get in that large bid?
Yeah, I mean, you felt the pressure with both. I mean, even our last year at Utah State, we ended up with 4 teams in that last season, and I thought it was a great overall year for our conference. And we played probably 7 bubble games down the stretch, just to make it, and lost in the championship, to San Diego State, who we all know was fabulous that season. And, to go back to VCU, I knew it's a great program. It's one of the storied, mid-major plus programs in all of college basketball, and certainly one where you can win and win in a big way. And certainly the opportunity to work for Ed there, he and I were obviously close from years past. And I think, honestly, both of us probably thought it would never happen, that we would ever have the opportunity to work together. And so it really is, it really was a special 2 years for me there. And honestly, I didn't anticipate leaving, quite honestly.
Yeah.
I loved it so much there, being with Ed and being at VCU. But when this obviously happened, when Coach Bennett decided to, retire from college basketball, it certainly was an opportunity when it was presented to me, one that I couldn't pass up.
Now, you had mentioned how, VCU is set up to win, and, it has a long history of its head coaches having great success. Last year, you had a really, really good mid-major team, a team that pushed BYU in the first round of the NCAA tournament. But to get there, it took a near flawless performance in the Atlantic 10 tournament to get to that point. What was it like for you having a 25-plus win team, but then having the pressure to win the Atlantic 10 tournament to get into March Madness?
Yeah, I think we just tried not to think about it, quite honestly, and focus on what was right in front of us. And, we were very fortunate in that we had a very mature team, a team that was determined, and a team that was hurt from the year previous when we lost in the championship to Duquesne, and Coach Dambrot's team. And they were determined to not let that happen again. And so, game by game, when there were some moments, we didn't shoot it particularly well over the 3-game stretch. I think we shot 28%, from 3, but we found other ways to score. The offensive rebounding and just the focus that team had in key moments when they were pressed, was really special to watch. And to be able to have different guys step up at different times. Jack Clark ended up being, the MVP of the tournament, which is a tremendous thing. And, Max Scholga had an awesome year, and Joe Bamiso was tremendous all season. Zeb Jackson was steady Eddie. Phil Russell gave us that toughness. And it was a fun all around season. We hate that it ended, in that first round, but we played an excellent team in BYU. And, we certainly were happy to win that championship, no doubt.
So you push BYU in the first round of the NCAA tournament. You lose, obviously, a hard-fought game. What happened after that game until you finalized the deal with Virginia?
Yeah, I think we all went back, and we left that night, I believe, and we all went back to Richmond, spent a day, obviously, then accepted the job, and then went and told the team, and that's never easy, when you have to go in there, and literally everybody was there. Ed's in there, our whole staff is obviously in there. Our academic, coordinator, Sophia, was there. And so it really was tough because that group, was so close. And, I wanted to make sure that, they heard from me and not from somebody else. I mean, the speculation, as began right away in October.
Yeah.
And so these kids had to deal with it all year. And, none of us allowed it to impact, what was first and foremost in our minds. And that was, doing our best for VCU, competing for a championship, and to have that group of people, not just the players or just our staff, everybody that was involved that played a vital role in that, be in the room there that day. I think they got a sense. I was able to really explain to them the why. Why am I leaving VCU to go to the University of Virginia? And I think after hearing me, communicate to them about, what this place here means to me, I think it was pretty clear to those guys that, it was the right move for me and my family at this particular time.
Well, tell us why then. Why Virginia?
Yeah, Virginia it's a place that's home for me. like we talked about at the beginning of this, from third grade to ninth grade, these were the formative years, of my life with my parents. And, you think about your time from third grade to ninth grade, you're around your parents all the time. And I was fortunate enough to live literally right next to University Hall and to have that time with my father. To be a young kid coming into University Hall and see Dawn State, not only the men's team, but the women's team practicing too. Dawn Staley's playing for UVA at the time.
Right.
Debbie Ryan's winning championships and going to the Final Four. Coach Holland obviously was doing big things, at UVA. And so, in a lot of ways, this is where I fell in love with basketball. And so to be able to come here, reconnect with people that, I've known for so long. I just went to Game 5 with Coach Carlisle up there, in the Knicks. That one didn't go so well, but they got the next one and are able to advance. So we're all so happy for him and the great success that he's had over his career. But it's just it was a place that has meant a great deal to me and our family, and certainly. One that we want to do our best for now. I think that's the biggest thing. Big responsibility.
Ryan, your father was an ACC head coach at Wake Forest. You grew up, as you've referenced, in ACC country in Charlottesville. What does it mean for Ryan Odom to be an ACC head coach?
Yeah, it means a lot. I mean, obviously, I've had a lot of help along the way. I've had some great mentors, guys that I've worked for. Over the years, Jeff Jones, Seth Greenberg, Larry Davis, Alan Major, Eddie Biedenbach, who turns 80 here pretty soon. I've had some, and my college coach, Coach Shaver, a guy that I played for, who our team and my teammates respect so much, learned so much from him. And, to be able to give that back to these kids now, and at the highest level here in the ACC and compete against some of the storied programs and great coaches in all of college basketball, it's going to be really challenging, as we know, but it's going to be a lot of fun as well.
So you turn the page and you come home to Charlottesville, a program that has had Tony Bennett as the face and the figure of this program now for obviously well over a decade, won a national championship in 2019. And as I referenced earlier, you and Tony are forever linked together because of that famous UMBC Virginia game in 2018. Mm-hmm. What is the relationship like between Ryan Odom and Tony Bennett?
It's very good. It's always been very good, quite honestly. I mean, he and I text, pretty much right after that game. And, certainly, Virginia is a special place, as we've discussed, to me. And so that moment was a little bit bittersweet, for me. I was really happy for all of us and our fans, and obviously, most importantly, our players. But at the same time, it was bittersweet because I knew what they were going through on the other side of it. And so, to see them bounce back and win that title was really gratifying for me personally, and really exciting for the university as a whole. And you want to see good guys succeed, mm-hmm. and guys that are good human beings succeed. And certainly there's none better than Tony Bennett. And, we've obviously been in close contact since I've been here. He and Laurel are still going to be here in town, and we'll be at games, and we'll be extremely supportive of University of Virginia basketball and Virginia as a whole. And I'm going to need him. I'm going to lean on him, as we go about this process, because, coaches come and go, right? And he did so much for this place, and so did others as well that came before him. And so we want to honor everybody, that has meant so much to this place. We're doing a former player Zoom this week on June 4th. And, we'll have over 100 players on that Zoom, that, gave everything they had to this place. And so we want to make sure that we're continuing to connect and tighten our group up, because we really do have a special thing here at Virginia.
One of the things that made Tony Bennett's team such a force when he was at Virginia is Tony didn't necessarily have teams. He had a program. He had players who stayed multiple years. They redshirted. As you are now the steward of Virginia's program, Are you going to be able to build a program, or do you think you're going to have to build a team year by year?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both, right? You don't want to give in to not being able to establish a culture and a program that everybody can be proud of. But it's not the same as it was. Kids are able to move, easier and more freely from school to school. And that's a part of life now. But for us, we want to recruit the best high school players in the country, guys that have talent, that understand the value of the University of Virginia degree. That is not ever going to change. And then we want to be able to retain those kids, get them to see a vision for themselves, here at UVA, and be able to retain them to continue to grow with the program. And then we want to be able to go out in that portal and on that market and find guys that fit our style, that fit this university, that can really, help us continue to be a championship caliber program. And so, we're excited to do that, and certainly not giving in to the 1 year thing. But we realize that you have to be able to, be on your toes. You've got to be ready, when that portal opens, to be able to attack and find the right guys and right fit, right character, that we need here at UVA.
How will you balance high school recruiting with the transfer portal with international recruiting?
Yeah, I think international recruiting obviously is going to be a focus. We've got, guys that we've signed this year that will be coming in as first-year guys, and guys that, won't have that many years, to play, that are older. And so I think you have to balance. You have to have older guys in college basketball now to be supremely competitive at the highest level. But you also have to have, talented young guys that see a vision for themselves and fit in with those older guys. I think that was one of the reasons at VCU this past year that we were able to be as successful as we were, is because we had, those fifth-year guys, fourth-year guys, but we also had really talented freshmen. We had a freshman that started basically every game the whole season, and another one that came off the bench and was really, really impactful for us. And so it can still work, in a normal way. You just have to, the pieces have to fit, and you have to put it together in a proper way. And some years are going to be easier than others. This particular year, because of, the change, the massive change, roster reconstruction, it wasn't as easy to do that. But we're really confident in the young guys that we brought in.
Well, Ryan, what are your initial impressions of the roster that you have put together?
Yeah, we're excited about it. We feel like we have every position, filled, in a really positive way. We feel like we have a pretty deep roster, and we have guys that fit this university, guys that fit our style. And, we're excited to get to work. We actually don't start. We don't start until June 16th, when the guys arrive that weekend. So we're a little bit behind at this point, but we'll catch up pretty quickly. We have major goals for the off season. We want to connect the group together, and then we want to connect them to this university and this place and the tradition that has existed here. And so I think the quicker that we can do that, the better off we'll be.
Now, one of the players that you're bringing in, you had the good fortune, at least, now, of coaching against, maybe not at the time, in Dallin Hall, who was at BYU last year. What did you see in Dallin when you were preparing for BYU in the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I saw a big-time player. When he entered the game, obviously he came off the bench. He sacrificed for that team. I think it was one of the reasons they were as successful as they were. He was willing to do that for the team. He would sub in the game, and immediately the game would change. His ability to play and pick and roll, his ability to defend, multiple positions, his toughness, his winning mentality, his leadership out on the court, all of those things that I just mentioned there, we're going to utilize here at the University of Virginia. He's a dynamite person and a really, really good player. And I think he's going to be able to flourish here at UVA.
Which of the newcomers that you're bringing in that maybe isn't getting a lot of attention do you think has a chance to have a major impact on your first team at Virginia?
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways they all are kind of getting a lot of pub, right now. Everybody talks about Malik. Malik's dynamite, and he comes in scoring quickly, like averaging 19 a game out at San Francisco. Again, a very mature guy, a very motivated player, a winner, and really excited about him. It's hard to go all the way through the roster, but Grunlow from Germany is a dynamite prospect and one that we know is going to be really, really good. But we're fired up, for all the guys to get here on June 16th and looking forward to them, competing with one another first and getting to know one another, and then getting ourselves ready to compete against the real competition.
And before that, obviously, before the ACC gets going, you're going to have to deal with your non-conference schedule. We know you're going to have a game in the ACC SEC Challenge. We know you're also going to take part in the Greenbrier MTE with a couple other power conference teams, and you're also going to start a series with Virginia. Is there anything else of substance for the Cavaliers in 25-26 before ACC play?
Yeah, we did start a 4-year deal. Coach Bennett actually did this with Maryland.
Yep.
We've got Maryland for 4 years, and then I think that starts here at JPJ. Our SEC game will most likely be on the road. Mm-hmm. So we know we're going to have a tough opponent there. They had an awesome, conference season. Their conference obviously was dynamite this past year, and the ACC is looking to do the same thing and get back there this year in a big way. A lot of really good teams throughout our conference. And so we're trying to round out the schedule. The ACC gave us 2 games back. Yep. And so we're working through now, trying to schedule high major teams, may even potentially schedule another ACC team that we're not playing, potentially not done yet, but could be a factor there. We'll see if that materializes. But definitely want to try to bolster the schedule and put ourselves in a really good position to schedule for an NCAA tournament berth.
So you may schedule another ACC team in a non-conference game.
Maybe.
Wow.
Maybe. Not a definite.
That is fascinating. That is fascinating. That's a
Would
great
you do that?
Right there, Ryan.
Would you do it?
Would I do that? Well, you're going to have to tune into the podcast every week. No, I would not do that. That's just me. But I know how difficult scheduling is, but I think there's enough teams out there looking for games that, we can get a little bit more pop to JPJ.
It just depends on the matchup, right? If you have a good matchup and it makes sense for both teams, then maybe you do it. If not,
right. If I could get a second game against Duke, I would probably do it. I don't know if is Duke the opponent or no.
No. I can't tell you, man. I can't tell you. You have to go do your research.
Yeah, I will. There'll be text messages being sent out after this game, after this podcast. But Ryan, you obviously have great memories of the ACC. The ACC even as far back as 6 years ago, which isn't that long ago. In 2019, had 3 number 1 seeds in the NCAA tournament. So it's just 6 years ago. How does the ACC get its brand back?
Yeah, I think it's on its way now, quite honestly. I think the investment is there. You're seeing it across the conference. Teams are investing more in their basketball programs and obviously in the players that are going to be playing here. I think that's a big factor, obviously. I think you've got new coaches, that are entering the league that all have been successful at other places. And are going to be ready to compete, in our league. And I think the fan bases are ready for it. I mean, the ACC is the ACC, and certainly from a basketball perspective, a storied tradition of excellence, that's existed here a long, long time. That number 1 picks, national champions, you name it, we've had it, and it just sometimes things are cyclical. And in this climate, things can change very rapidly, as you know. And you could have a great team one year, and then the next year it just doesn't fall right from the transfer portal, or you can't get the teams to the players to mesh as you need them to, or you have injuries. Worse yet, all of these things factor in, to not only individual teams but leagues not having the success that they so desire, and so. Sometimes it can be cyclical, but we're confident in the ACC and where it's headed. And obviously we've added new teams now, and I think they're trying to do their best. Our leadership's really strong, trying to do their best from a scheduling standpoint to give us the best chance for success, to prove ourselves outside of the conference.
Yeah.
And really, that's where it starts. It starts in non-conference. We all have to do our jobs in non-conference, because once you get into conference play, it's hard to change. The net doesn't change very much.
Yes.
And so you've got to be really high at the beginning of the year. And so that's the focus for this coming season.
Now, Virginia won a national championship just 6 years ago, as I referenced, when the ACC had 3 number 1 seeds in the NCAA tournament, won a great game against Texas Tech in a national title game. But the Cavaliers have not won a game in the NCAA tournament since. Why is that?
I don't know. I couldn't answer that. I mean, I think sometimes it's just matchups, and who you're playing. It's really hard to win any game, in the NCAA tournament. And certainly it's something that we want to do here at Virginia. We want to advance deep, and we want to try to win another national championship. I know that's a tall order. Only one gets to do it every season.
Yeah.
But the fact remains, we're not that far removed from a 2019 national championship, and there are multiple teams in our conference that have done it. And we're all competing, to do that. If you can be at the top of the ACC, then you're probably going to have a chance to compete, for that coveted national championship. And I can show it to you right there. You can see it. You see it right there?
Look at that. Wow. That's a recruiting tool right there.
There you go.
Impressive.
It's the trophy.
Yeah. Impressive. Well, final thing, Ryan, I know you just said, the goal is to compete for a national championship, and I know you're still waiting to get a better feel for your team who come to campus here in a couple of weeks. But what are the biggest things you hope to accomplish in year one?
Yeah, certainly getting back to the NCAA tournament, that's something that we want to do. We want to compete in the ACC at the highest level for an ACC championship. We want to get off to a great start. I think one of the things I want to do is really connect with the fan base. I think that's one of the biggest things that we need to do here with our new staff. It's going to be a different style of play. And so the fans are going to be, they're used to a certain style of play, a very winning style of play, obviously, the winningest in Virginia history. And certainly it's going to look different, out there. And so I'm excited for our fans to get into the arena, with us and compete with us. And we've got one of the best home courts in all of college basketball at JPJ. And so we want to take advantage of that. And I think our style of play, where we're picking up full court and putting pressure on the defense or on the offense, and then pushing it really fast in transition and putting pressure on their defense, I think it's going to be a fun style for our fans. They'll be excited to see.
Well, Virginia basketball was a thing of beauty under Tony Bennett, a different type of thing of beauty for some people, but Virginia basketball could be a thing of beauty again under Ryan Odom with a different model. Ryan, congratulations on the job. Thrilled for you to get the opportunity to come back home. And as always, look forward to staying connected along the way.
Thanks, John. Appreciate you, man.
You got it. That's Virginia head coach Ryan Odom. I'm John Rothstein. This is the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube page.